In the quiet suburbs of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, there stood an ordinary-looking duplex on Chase Street. To the neighbors, it appeared like any other home. But behind closed doors for 13 terrifying years, one family would endure an ordeal so horrifying that paranormal investigators would later call it one of the most dangerous cases they'd ever witnessed. This is the story of the Smurl family haunting.
It was August 1973 when Jack and Janet Smurl made a decision that would change their lives forever. A flood, the devastating aftermath of Hurricane Agnes, had destroyed their home in Wilkes-Barre. Desperate for shelter, they found themselves in a modest 80-year-old duplex at 328 Chase Street. The house seemed like a reasonable choice. Nothing fancy, but solid. With Jack's parents living on one side, and Jack, Janet, and their two young daughters, Dawn and Heather, on the other, it felt like a fresh start. The family rolled up their sleeves, painted walls, made repairs, and settled into the quiet, middle-class neighborhood. They had no idea what was already waiting for them inside those walls. For the first few months, things were normal, peaceful even. But then, in a way that would become disturbingly familiar to them over the coming years, something changed. Small things at first. Janet noticed mysterious stains appearing on the carpet. Strange odors would waft their rooms, the unmistakable stench of sulfur and rotting eggs, the kind of smell that made your stomach turn. Then came the sounds. Knocks, persistent rhythmic knocking that echoed through the walls, footsteps in empty rooms, banging that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The family would wake in the middle of the night to these sounds, hearts pounding, wondering if they were losing their minds. But they weren't losing their minds. They were just beginning to understand that they weren't alone. Objects started moving on their own. Beds would shake violently in the dead of night, as if an invisible force was tossing them like cardboard. Mysterious scratches would appear on family members' skin. Deep, deliberate scratches that appeared without warning, as if something invisible was clawing at them from just beyond the veil of reality. The family's German Shepherd, a loyal companion who should have felt safe in its own home, was suddenly thrown violently against the wall by an unseen force. The dog yelped in terror, and the family realized this wasn't just noise and strange smells anymore. This was something that could physically hurt them. But the worst was yet to come. Physical assaults began. Janet reported being attacked by invisible hands, grabbed, pinned down, struck by something she couldn't see. Jack experienced something even more disturbing. He claimed he was being sexually assaulted by an entity in the night. Specifically, he described attacks by what paranormal researchers call a succubus, a demonic female entity known for tormenting men in their sleep. Both Jack and Janet bore mysterious bruises and marks they couldn't explain. The neighbors began hearing things too. Neighbors reported blood-curdling screams piercing the quiet Pennsylvania night, so terrifying that people would come running to check on the family. But when they arrived, they'd find the Smurls frantic, sometimes even away from the home. Yet somehow those screams had still echoed from inside. The family desperately sought help. Priests came. They performed blessings. They attempted exorcisms. Nothing worked. In fact, the activity often seemed to intensify after these spiritual interventions, as if something within those walls was becoming angrier, more aggressive. By the early 1980s, local media caught wind of the story. News vans pulled up to Chase Street. Reporters and paranormal enthusiasts descended on the property. What had been their private nightmare was now becoming a public spectacle, and the family's anonymity was shattered. By 1986, after years of escalating terror, the Smurl family made a desperate decision. They would reach out to the most famous demonologists in America, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Lorraine Warren was a clairvoyant and medium who had investigated some of the most harrowing paranormal cases in American history. Ed Warren was her husband and partner, a demonologist who had faced down entities that most people would dismiss as pure fantasy. Together, they had earned a reputation as serious investigators in a field often dismissed as fraudulent. When they arrived at the Chase Street house, something immediately felt wrong to them. The very atmosphere was heavy with malevolence. Lorraine began her investigation, and what she discovered was deeply disturbing. She identified not one, not two, but 4 distinct entities occupying the home. The first was an elderly woman, harmless compared to the others, but unsettling nonetheless. This spirit appeared to wear old-fashioned clothing and would sometimes drift silently through rooms like a ghost from another era. The Warrens believed she was likely an original occupant of the home, someone who had died on the property decades earlier and never left. The second entity was a young girl, but there was nothing innocent about this spirit. She was violent, aggressive, and seemed to feed on chaos. She was responsible for objects being hurled across rooms, for the loud bangs that terrorized the family at night, for the scratching of skin that left marks on their bodies. This girl seemed to have a particular vendetta against Janet Smurl and Mary Smurl, Jack's mother, targeting them with special ferocity. The third was a man. His presence was different from the others, less aggressive, more sorrowful. He appeared as a shadowy figure, or manifested as a profound cold that would grip the air in certain rooms. Unlike the violent girl, this man seemed restless, but not inherently evil, as if he was trapped in the home by circumstances beyond his control. But the true source of the horror, the entity at the core of all the suffering the family endured, was something far darker. It was a demon. This demon, according to the Warrens' investigation, exerted control over the other 3 spirits like a puppet master. It commanded them, manipulated them, drove them to greater acts of violence and depravity. This entity was the source of the most disturbing phenomena the family had experienced. During the Warrens' investigation, the demon made itself known. When the investigators played Gregorian chants, sacred music meant to repel evil, the demon responded with rage. Doors slammed with such force they nearly came off their hinges. Furniture rattled and shook. Objects flew across rooms. The house felt like it was under attack from within, as if the demon was using its fury to express its defiance. Ed Warren claimed to witness something that would stay with him forever. He saw a dark mass, an actual shadow of concentrated darkness form before his eyes in the house. It wasn't the shadow cast by an object. It was something else, something that defied explanation. Most terrifying of all, the investigators found the message smeared across a mirror in blood-like substance. The message was simple, direct, and undeniably hostile. Get out. The demon didn't want them there. It wanted them gone. And yet, the Warrens pressed on, documenting everything. Audio recordings captured inexplicable knocking and rapping sounds that had no natural source. Photographs showed unexplained anomalies, mysterious shapes and shadows that shouldn't have been there. Lorraine Warren would later describe the family as chosen. Not chosen for blessing, but chosen for battle. She believed that the Smurls were caught in a spiritual war greater than themselves, targeted by a force of genuine evil that had decided to make their home a battleground. The Warrens facilitated multiple exorcisms, bringing in Catholic and Episcopal priests to perform sacred rituals meant to expel the demonic presence. For brief moments, it seemed to work. The activity would quiet. The attacks would stop. The family would dare to hope that it was finally over. But then, it would return. The knocking would start again. The scratches would appear. The terror would resume, sometimes even worse than before, as if the demon was punishing them for attempting to banish it. By 1987, after 13 years of relentless horror, the Smurl family could take it no more. They abandoned Chase Street, hoping that distance would provide the relief that priests and prayers had not. For a while, it seemed like it might work. But then, in their new home, it started again. The black masses appeared. The unexplained noises returned. The demon had followed them. It had decided that it wasn't finished with the Smurl family. Desperate and defeated, the family turned to the Catholic Church one final time. This time, the church authorized something extraordinary, a secret exorcism, performed away from the media, away from curious eyes. The details of this ritual were kept confidential, but according to the family, it finally worked. The terror stopped. After decades of living with invisible monsters, of enduring attacks they couldn't defend against, of watching their family fall apart under the weight of impossible circumstances, the Smurls were finally free. But the scars remained. Jack Smurl, a man who had been subjected to sexual assaults by a demonic entity, who had watched his wife and mother attacked by invisible hands, who had lived in constant fear, was forever changed by his experiences. He would carry the trauma of those years until his death in 2017. Janet Smurl and their daughters survived, and to this day they live near West Pittston, reportedly free from paranormal disturbances since the final exorcism in the early 1990s. The Smurl family haunting inspired a book called The Haunted, co-written by the family and the Warrens themselves, published in 1986. In 1991, a made-for-television movie dramatized their horrifying ordeal. More recently, their story inspired elements in paranormal films that have captivated audiences nationwide. But here's what makes this case so significant. Ed and Lorraine Warren, investigators who claim to have witnessed genuine demonic entities and participated in multiple exorcisms, called this one of the most dangerous cases they ever handled. This wasn't a minor poltergeist or a playful ghost. This was something else entirely. Of course, skeptics point to the lack of concrete proof. They suggest psychological stress, group hysteria, or misinterpretation of natural phenomena. And that's fair. Science demands evidence. But ask yourself, what would you do if you heard your loved one screaming from an empty house? What would you do if you saw scratches appear on their skin from invisible hands? What would you do if priests and exorcisms failed and your only escape was to flee your home in the middle of the night? The Smurl family knows what they experienced. The neighbors heard the screams. The Warrens documented the phenomena. Whether you believe in demons or not, one thing is certain. Something extraordinary happened on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. And for 13 years, a family lived through a nightmare that most of us can barely imagine. The Smurl family haunting remains one of the most documented and debated paranormal cases in American history. It stands as a testament to either humanity's capacity for delusion or to the existence of forces we don't yet understand. What do you believe? Are demons real, or did the Smurls fall victim to their own minds? You decide. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more tales from the dark corners of paranormal history. See you in the next one.